All right, kind of doing a video here talking about what we're doing for oil change number one, basically. So car's at close to like 850 miles, it's probably closer to 900 maybe. But coming about that time where I'm just going to do the first oil change preemptively, so right after break-in. I'm going to be following a little more of an aggressive oil change schedule than the dealer. So I'm going to be doing every 4,000 miles personally, just to be on the safe side. And the dealer recommends every 6,000. The manual recommends better. So I'm still going to be bringing it in to the dealer to do the normal 6,000 maintenance. I just will tell them basically just don't touch the oil. I've already done it. Every 4,000, I'm keeping logs of that. So if I ever sell the car, I can just kind of prove that like, hey, here are the receipts and did oil change every 4,000. Here's the proof that's been maintained. So trying to be a little more proactive with keeping that engine in tip-top shape, basically. So kind of what we got going on over here is obviously an oil filter. So that's the part number. If you want to look that up, they look up the VIN for my car, and that's kind of what they reported back as what my Elantra N should be taking. So I'm pretty sure that's the exact same filter as the Veloster N as well. This engine has a lot of commonality with that. I'm pretty sure it's the exact same engine. Maybe just the turbocharger I know is different. It's bigger. But the engine, I feel, if I remember correctly, is very, very similar to how the Veloster N is set up. So got the oil filter. For oil, I'm running AMSOIL. So this is AMSOIL 0W30. I have a good experience with AMSOIL in the past, at least in college when we did motorsports over there. I think we were sponsored by AMSOIL actually, but we run scenarios where we've accidentally cooked AMSOIL to the point where I think we sustained over 300 degrees of, maybe it was 350, something of that sort during a competition, and cooked the crap out of the oil. The engine didn't throw a rod, ran fine. Didn't really notice until after checked telemetry and realized that like, holy crap, that was really, really, really hot. So engine was fine, honestly. Nothing seemed abnormal with that, so I was kind of impressed. The AMSOIL held up with that, so I'm just going to kind of continue that trend. I guess that's why they sponsor teams, just to keep the lineage. But I don't really see an issue with that. And it seems like, I mean, they're rated decently heavily online. People seem to like it as well. So I'm going to kind of be sticking with that. So for our car, for the Elantra N, they recommend 0W30 across the board. This is a little bit weird because if you look at the manual for the 2021 Veloster N, they actually, which is a very similar engine to this, if not pretty much the exact same engine, Data 2, they actually give lost viscosity ranges, as in they give you a different weight you could possibly use depending on the temperature. If you look at the Veloster N, Elantra N, and Kona N manuals for this 2022 year, though, they are 0W30 across the board. They got rid of the viscosity ranges, which is a little bit weird because on the Veloster N, that was fine. The reason why you might want to do that is if you want to run a lighter weight oil, and depending on temperature, is you maybe get a little more power out of it. There's a little bit less resistance, and you don't really need it to run a heavier oil for maybe like colder conditions, or I might be getting that backwards. But point is, you can optimize the oil weight for your environment basically. So that's kind of gone away. It's just 0W30 across the board, which isn't it's safe, maybe a little conservative, but is what it is basically. That's what the manual recommends. So that's kind of what we're running. If you're picking an oil, all you have to do is, 0W30, make sure it is an SN plus oil. Pretty much most should be conforming to that nowadays. I know AMSOIL is, if you look up online, this complies with SN plus. All that means is that this has been tested at least against, I think, the GM Dexo spec, which is something that should be dealing with what we call low speed pre-ignition, which can be an issue with high power, turbocharged engines, which is kind of what we got over here. They were kind of noting that if you can look up papers on this online, but basically high power turbo engines were running direct injection turbo engines were running into an issue where the charges would detonate early, and they haven't really completely locked down why that's the case. But one thing that they noted could contribute is an oil droplet inside a cylinder contributing to a combustion event before it actually hits the spark plug, which is catastrophic. Not immediately catastrophic, but it will wreck the engine over time. So current cars, I don't think have that issue anymore, mainly because largely because the engine controllers got a little bit smarter to figure out scenarios that cause LSPI, and also they revised the oils a little bit to try to deal with that. So it's not just AMSOIL that does it. AMSOIL was already compliant, I believe. But plenty of other oils out there should be SM Plus compliant. Just verify that it is actually SM Plus. Double check the manual. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, 0W30, that LSPI rating, and you should be good to go, basically. So I'm going to be doing both of those things. And I'm actually also going to be putting in a Fumoto valve. And the reason why is because typically what you do for the oil change is you're going to take the drain plug out, and you're going to pull off the crush washer on the drain plug, drain the oil, and when you put the drain plug back, get a new crush washer, put it on there, and then tighten that up. So I actually got these from the dealer with the oil filters. I was reading around, and there's been a little bit of concern from the Elantra N owners about the crush washer getting stuck, or just binding, or just being hard to deal with somewhere. I'm forgetting the exact details, but I figure I'm going to be doing the oil change a little more often. So I'm just going to put a Fumoto in there just to make my life a little easier when I do it at home. So if you're not familiar with what Fumoto valve is, these are a little controversial because they add more moving parts to a system, and it adds more bulk to a system, basically. What these basically are is this replaces your drain plug. So you can see the thread over here. It goes through this hole over here and adds this thing onto it, which is basically, this is a spring. And you pull that spring down, rotate it 9 degrees, opens this valve, and your oil will come out. So that will simplify, pretty much like that, basically. So that'll simplify the oil change down because you don't need to take this plug out. Just open that valve. See, they include a little bit of a clip to try to constrain it. And that is on a decently powerful spring in there, so it shouldn't come loose during normal driving. I've never heard of it come loose during normal driving, but there are people out there who are a little bit concerned that like a rock could hit this when you're driving, open up, spill your oil everywhere, and that's not good. I've never heard of that occurring, but one thing I have heard of occurring that could be an issue with these is if your oil pan has these sticking out the bottom, that could affect your ground clearance, because if it's right at the bottom of the oil pan, it's going to stick out, obviously. If you hit something like a rock underneath the vehicle, it could take out the valve, and obviously that's bad because you're leaking oil everywhere. That shouldn't be a problem with our car, which is the Elantra, because there's a plate that kind of covers that entire area, so that shouldn't be an issue. And if I remember correctly, the drain plug sits more at the lower part of the pan, but it sticks out the back. It isn't like directly sticking out at the bottom, so it shouldn't really be an issue over there. So I'm going to give that a go. The part number is this is the F106SX. That means it's a M14 thread, M14 by 1.5 thread, and this is the adjustable. So that's what the SX kind of sort of stands for. You can see what's going on over there. If you can, you can loosen the bolt a little bit and rotate it where you need to kind of clock it. They do make a non-adjustable version as well. It's a little bit better, less moving parts, less things to go wrong. Just if it ends up in a position where it's not clocked where you would want it, that could be an issue. There's a little bit of a cutout actually on the bottom of the Elantra, where, at least on the Veloster, where that allows oil to exit. So you do kind of want to clock it right, so it isn't going where so it's going through that pass hole. I think it's big enough to like fit your hand through, if I remember correctly. So having the clockability is nice. So I'm going to give that a go, basically. There's a little bit of seal glide here that I'm going to put on the O-ring. Just kind of lubricate that to make sure it goes on, it seals well, and that should be good to go. So that's oil. So oil filter, oil, motor valve, pretty standard as far as oil change goes, nothing really special. What we're also going to do at the same time while the oil is draining is I'm going to actually do a rear motor mount swap onto the actual car. So also I just looked in the manual. This car takes 4.5, well, not 4.5, 5.49, basically 5.5 quarts of oil. So got 6 in there, so should be good to go on that. But we're also going to do at the same time as a rear motor mount swap. So this is a TurboTech rear motor mount. This is actually from the Veloster N, but as far as I know, it's the same thing for the Elantra N. So if you're not familiar with what a rear motor mount swap does or why we would do it, basically this will stop the engine from moving around as much within the engine chamber. So there are, if I remember correctly, I believe there are 3 mounts on the Data 2s within the Elantra. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I think there's one on the top left, top right. It's obviously one on the bottom, which is the lower motor mount, which is what this is going to replace. So that lower motor mount, what that's doing is it's stopping the engine from, like, what is it? If this is the engine, it's stopping the engine from like rotating this way. Because obviously if the crankshaft's rotating like this, the engine could resist by moving one, or like kind of rotating one way or the other. The rare motor mount is supposed to resist that a little bit. Now, if this were like a legit race car, this wouldn't have any rubber or elastomer in here. It'd just be straight solid. That's ideal because you don't want the engine moving around ideally. When you're putting down power, you want it to be just stiff. The problem with that is if you've ever been in a legit race car, you know the entire thing vibrates like crazy because the engine literally is directly connected to you. Any vibration the engine is doing, you're going to feel it because there's no buffer between you and the engine. You're just feeling the engine basically. What most commercial cars do with the rear motor mount is they add a little bit of a rubber or elastomer component in there to kind of dampen down the vibrations, so it doesn't feel like you're just vibrating sitting at a traffic light, for instance. The problem with that, though, is it does allow the engine some slop to move around, and what people have noted in the Veloster N and probably also with the Elantra N is it can have a little bit of a wheel hop issue, and this kind of addresses that. That's why you would possibly think about swapping that out. It's not affecting power, anything in the powertrain. It's just trading off a little bit of NVH, like noise, vibration, and harshness. I think that's what that stands for better shifting and less wheel hop, basically. So not affecting power in any way. It's just reducing like wheel hop and it's increasing the amount of vibration that you're going to feel, basically. So pros and cons of that. That should deal with the wheel hop issue. So what's happening with wheel hop, what I believe is happening is, someone out there correct me on this if I'm wrong, we're totally off base. I think what's happening is when you're putting out a lot of power in like less optimal traction conditions, if one of those front wheels breaks traction suddenly, the engine's going to suddenly be able to slop forward or back because it's suddenly not putting down that much power. And as soon as that wheel regains traction, which will be pretty quick, the engine's going to flop back into place, and that will oscillate a little bit if you keep putting down power. It's not bad for the engine. It'll just feel really terrible in the cockpit. And I actually had one of the a wheel hop events a couple of days ago. It was wet. I was setting it up a hill, just questionable to be safe. I probably will not be doing that in the future, but it did have some pretty harsh wheel hop, just full throttling it up. Backed off and it obviously stopped. So it didn't feel great in the cockpit. It just felt like something banging. Just felt like that's basically literally just what it sounds like, and you'll feel that. So that should kind of deal with it. So pop the drain plug, and you basically just unbolt these two things. Unbolt the one bolt that comes out of the engine. Replace this with it, and you should be good to go. If you never watched the videos of people doing it on the Veloster N, and you can definitely go and do that. It's right there. It's not hidden by anything. You shouldn't need to take off any plates, any covers. It should be right there, accessible. And I've heard of people doing this like literally in their backyard. Just get it on a jack stand, get under the car. It should be just right there. You don't really need to do anything to it. I'm just going to actually get it onto a lift. I'm lucky enough to have a rental place where I can actually rent a lift for an hour. Just going to get it up there. I just want to check the car out. Kind of just ogle kind of what we got underneath the car, take some pictures maybe for later, just for noting down what the car looked like right now. Probably not a bad idea. And in case like any like funny business with a dealer, if I move anywhere, I like my current dealer. I don't think they're going to do that, but if I ever have to take it to any other shop, I can maybe reference that, like, hey, like the brake line was like this, or this bolt definitely wasn't here, or this definitely wasn't stripped. Stuff like that would be kind of nice to take some photos. But yeah, that's kind of what I got planned. So oil change this Saturday and rear motor mount swap. Should be kind of interesting. I've heard some people note with the motor mount swaps that these do also have kind of a break-in period where you're just gonna, it's not gonna hurt, but like it's gonna vibrate a lot more than usual. So not looking forward to that. I'll report on how that process kind of feels like. I've heard these soften up over time, basically. Right, this is the TurboTech rear motor mount. Sixth Engineering makes one as well, so does Boomba. The reason why I went with the TurboTech mount is this has a square bushing, which is kind of interesting because the Boomba and the sixth ones, you'll notice it's just a pin that goes out the back, similar to the front pin. What TurboTech believes they're doing with the square bushing is it's not only controlling back and forth movement, which is the engine trying to do this and trying to kick this thing back. This should also stop the engine from lifting up and down. So because this thing isn't allowed to rotate, basically it's as it is right now. So I thought that was kind of an interesting concept. I haven't heard anything bad about the sixth Engineering or the Boomba either, but it's kind of interesting. So I figured I'd give that a go. This also comes in silver, which is nice. Just literally just polished metal, which I think is kind of neat because, I mean, I'm hoping this looks kind of normal underneath the car. If a tech were to look underneath it, maybe just assume, maybe they just put a beefier motor mount in Elantra N. I don't know. Hopefully this doesn't really get detected. I wouldn't expect anyone to like void a warranty because of a rear motor mount. All this does is just makes you vibrate more. Honestly, it's not affecting turbo, it's not affecting powertrain, it's not affecting exhaust in any way. All it's doing is just stopping the engine from moving around more. If you want to put like a solid motor mount in there, I don't think that would ever void your warranty. It would just suck to drive because you'd just be vibrating the entire time. So, yeah, so if you want to give that a go, this is the TurboTech. This is actually the one for the Veloster N because that's pretty much the same engine, to be honest. So, yeah, that's kind of what we got going. So, any questions on that, I mean, let me know. But it should be an interesting weekend for sure.